What's up, friends? Welcome to another episode of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. It's amazing to have you here as always. You know what else would be amazing? If you would become a subscriber to this podcast. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, whatever you prefer, make sure you follow, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. So when a new episode of Syracuse Sports pops up, you won't miss a darn thing and you get to listen whenever you want. It's the beauty of the podcasting world. We send it to you and you make that decision on when you should listen to it. In my opinion, you should listen to it right away. But the beauty is you can listen whenever you want. A couple of things lined up for you today. Anish Shroff is going to join us, longtime friend of mine, former radio partner of mine, now the voice of lacrosse and one of the great play-by-play voices on ESPN. He calls lacrosse, but Anish does so many other things. He's the play-by-play voice also of the Carolina Panthers. He's been calling some Major League Baseball for ESPN radio and college and football and basketball as well. Anish is one of the more versatile play-by-play guys out there. It's been amazing to see his rise and his prominence, and an old friend of mine. And he is getting ready to call the NCAA tournament, and we are wondering just how far Syracuse lacrosse can go. It's been an up and down season for Syracuse. They entered the ACC tournament on the bubble. They came out of it with a 6 seed in the tournament and a home game upcoming against Harvard. Is Syracuse finding its stride at the exact right time? We will discuss that. Plus, Anish has a unique Sopranos connection to me and a unique Sopranos connection from where he's from. So we had to slip in a little Sopranos talk as well. Bada bing, right? Couple of things before we get to Anish, though. I was really struck. I was flat out inspired, to be honest, to see the reaction to Metallica playing at Lane Stadium. Notably, Metallica playing Enter Sandman at Lane Stadium, home of the Virginia Tech Hokies. Now, let this be said, that Metallica played the JMA Dome recently. Metallica rocked the JMA Dome recently, and it was an amazing show. I was not there. I wish I was, but from so many people that I've talked to, the experience of it, seeing the videos, Metallica at the Dome was an amazing experience. So don't get me wrong here. But I think we all know the unique connection that Lane Stadium, Virginia Tech football, and Enter Sandman has. Virginia Tech comes out to that song. It is one of the most electric entrances in all of college football. And to see Metallica play that stadium and play that song, I would highly encourage you to find a video. There's plenty of them out there of Metallica, Enter Sandman at Lane Stadium. It was one of the most electric things I have seen. And frankly, the tie between live music and live sports, that live music and live sports, and I could really do a whole podcast on this, but we'll save it for another time, are two of the only places people can go now where they're all united. They put their differences aside for one common cause, rooting for the home team and rooting for the band that they love. So to see those two worlds come together and to see Lane Stadium rocking the way that it was, naturally it got me thinking about Syracuse, right? Now, the home game experience at Syracuse has improved. The Dome has a new scoreboard. It looks a lot better. The food options are better. The sound is better. The wireless is improving. They're getting there, right? So the Dome experience now versus what it was even 5 years ago is remarkably improved. Fran Brown has gone out of his way to try and instill some traditions here, namely the quad walk, right? The quad walk is something that Fran Brown has been hell-bent on becoming a thing, and it is improving as a thing. We saw that at the spring game this year. Even in the rain, people came out to greet this team. The team sat in the rain and signed autographs for the fan base, and the quad walk before all the home games is improving. So props to Fran Brown on that. But Syracuse does not have an Enter Sandman. It does not have Ralphie running on the field. It does not have a Clemson running down the hill. It does not have a tradition. Syracuse has not given you a reason to be in your seat at kickoff, and it shows. You know, I go out of my way before every home game to take kind of a shot across the bow. Here's what the crowd looks like at kickoff. The seats are never full at the Dome. I love Syracuse fans, but there is a contingent of Syracuse fans that have a little LA Dodger fan in them. They arrive late and they leave early, and that's always something that has befuddled me over the years, right? But frankly, there's no reason for you to be in your seat at kickoff because they don't have a tradition. Now, some would say, and our Syracuse Sports Insiders I sent this out to them, and some amazing opinions have come back from them. And I think Vern hits it on the head here. It needs to be genuine and unique to become classic. Stop trying to copy others, be creative, and make others want to copy it. I think Matty G makes a great point here as well, saying you can't force tradition, but there has to be something outside of the game itself that people affiliate with Syracuse football. Now, Syracuse has traditions, the 44, notably, in the history of the players that have taken that field and the field at Archbold Stadium back in the day, the Saltine Warrior. We can go through it. It's not that Syracuse lacks that, but the fact that they do not have a unique opening or even a transition. Look at what Wisconsin does between the third and the fourth quarter when the entire stadium goes to Jump Around. Jump Around's a song that's only been around for the past 25, 30 years. Enter Sandman, by the way, only started 25, 30 years ago. So per the point of you can't force tradition, but you can start one. And I get why it has to be organic in a way, but I don't think Syracuse has that benefit. So I wish I had a better answer to this. I don't like to just complain about problems. I'd like to have solutions to those problems. And to be honest with you, I don't have a great solution here. But that's the beauty of this podcast. We can bring up an issue. I can send it to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, and they can send ideas. Jamal says, how about Alicia Keys, Jay-Z, New York? If they could rewrite that to add a central New York vibe to signal the team to take the field, music accompanied by a visual light show, a hype video of Syracuse football's historical moments to present, which they do. There's a little hype video coming in, and Syracuse comes out, and there's the smoke, and they do the train horn, and I mean, that's fine. But it's nowhere near what some of the great entrances in college football would be. Frankly, Syracuse would rank near the bottom of the list in that department. Randy says, I love this idea, frankly. How about an Orange Crush monster truck roaring in, SU players running behind it? The kids would love it. So would the adults. Toy Orange Crush monster trucks could be sold in the Dome. Hey, look, when Monster Jam comes to Syracuse, it sells out every year. I love that idea. I think that's unique. It's something nobody else does. And yeah, you can sell a few toys on the side, right? The point is, fans know this. They have expressed this to Syracuse, but nobody has landed on that idea. I wish I had that idea, but that's why I sent it out to you. So I think this should be a dialogue we should continue. We should send to the Syracuse Fan Council, send to John Wildhack, whoever it is, because you can start a tradition. Everything starts from somewhere. And Syracuse needs to have a better entrance. What Metallica playing Enter Sandman meant to those fans in Lane Stadium, I'm telling you, watch these videos and you will get a chill up your spine about how it was one of the greatest moments a lot of these fans have experienced. And that comes from what? It comes from tradition. It comes from college football. In this day and age, when we are losing more traditions, when college football and professional football, those lines are being blurred more than ever due to NIL, the transfer portal, and the business of college sports. What those Virginia Tech fans, what those Colorado fans, what Florida State fans, right? Go through all the traditions. Clemson, through them all. What unites them and what is unique to them are those traditions that you cannot buy, that cannot be swept away by the modern entities of college football. So I think that's the next step for Syracuse. And maybe, just maybe, we can present them with a solution to this. So thank you for that. A couple other notes that I wanted to put out there before we talk to Anish Shroff. So first thing is, we won an award. The Syracuse Press Club was kind enough to award us second place for Best Sports Show. And I want to congratulate my friends Matt Perino, recent guest on this pod, and Ryan Talbot from the Shout Buffalo Bills podcast, also, of course, from your friends here at syracuse.com, that took first place. So tell you what, if I'm going to take second place to anybody, those guys would be at the top of my list. They do an incredible job. As a Buffalo Bills fan, I can attest to this with their Buffalo Bills pod Shout, which you guys should be listening to and subscribe to and all that. But hey, second place ain't bad, and we will take that. And I just want to reiterate this. Any award that we win on this show is your award. We don't have a show without you. We don't have a show without our audience, and particularly our Syracuse Sports Insiders, who have created this unique marriage between the pod and the text line, their thoughts, their opinions, their questions, comments, and the connection that we have on the Syracuse Sports Insider text line is growing, and it is better than ever. And boy, in 2025, we're hoping to make it as best as it can be. So thanks to those of you that listen to this pod, that watch this pod, to our Syracuse Sports Insiders that have such a unique bond to this pod. This is your award. Congratulations to you for winning second place, thanks to our friends at the Syracuse Press Club. As you know, we like to play live music on this show. We like to highlight original music from original artists out there. And sure, we get a lot of music from artists that have connections to Central New York, because why else would they be listening to this pod, right? But I just want to reiterate that you do not have to be from Central New York to send us your original music, though. That's pretty cool when we can find local bands that do it. And guys, there is so many talented artists in Central New York, so many talented bands that if we can shine a little light on and give them a little more love, that's why we do this. And I've got a cool story here. So I got an email from Tim, who explained to me that he found an artist that we have featured a few times on this pod. And I'm going to put this on the screen for you guys to check out. So Tim runs Carolina Indie Fest, and it's coming up at the end of this month. You can see it on your screen there if you're watching on YouTube, and you can see our friends Paper Rabbit on that poster. The reason that Tim booked Paper Rabbit for Carolina Indie Fest is he heard them on this pod. How cool is that? Friends of the pod helping other friends of the pod. That made me so happy to hear that. You could be next. You could be heard on this pod, and who knows what it could lead to for you. So, our featured artist today, and I reached out to a bunch of artists. Sometimes you guys reach out to me, and sometimes I reach out to you. A shout out to Jeff Herbert at syracuse.com, who puts together something called the Syracuse playlist every month. And I devour that when it comes out. And I learned so much about artists that maybe I've heard a little bit about or don't know about. And I went through the Syracuse playlist, and there's a playlist on Spotify that you can subscribe to. And I reached out to a lot of these artists, and I said, hey, I do a little podcast, and we like to feature original artists. And so many of you were kind to grant us permission to play your music. And it's just as simple as that, guys. If you want your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports, just shoot me an email. All the details are in the show notes on how you can get in touch, and we'll highlight your music. And who knows, maybe you could be playing Carolina Indie Fest or something else. You could be booked for Bonnaroo, for all I know, coming up after being highlighted on this podcast. And our featured artist today, the Nate Gross Band. I heard this song on the Syracuse playlist, and it blew my socks off. It is one of my favorite new songs that I have heard, frankly, in months. Nate Gross Band, they play in and around Central New York. All the details, again, in the show notes and how you can find them. This is a song called Ride with the Devil. We're going to play a little bit of it for you here, and then we'll play the entire song at the end of the podcast. So thanks to Nate Gross Band. Thanks to Tim for his great email, our friends at Paper Rabbit as well. We love to highlight your original music here on Syracuse Sports, and you're going to hear a lot more of it coming up here. But get in touch if you want your music featured here on the pod. So let's listen to Ride with the Devil, and then we'll hear from a devil himself, Anish Shroff. Anish is ready for what could be one of the more wide open NCAA lacrosse tournaments we have seen in a long time. But before we dig into all that, it is good to see you, my friend, my former radio partner way back in the day, amongst other things we have shared over the years, including an affinity for The Sopranos, which I am currently doing a rewatch over. And look, I've told the story before, and I have to tell it again because it's something that Anish and I will have forever. So Anish comes to my house to watch the last episode of The Sopranos. We have a nice Italian feast. It's a beautiful thing. Spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen the show. End of the show, of course, the screen goes black. And literally 5 seconds later, all the power goes out in my neighborhood. So we thought those two things were interconnected. And for a good, Anish, how long were we thinking? Like, did we miss something here? What happened? We were in this time loop of we missed the end of The Sopranos because the power went out in my neighborhood. But no, it turns out, no, that's how they ended the show.
Yeah, it goes to black, and then so does everything else. And we're sitting there as if, wait, did the power cut out right as the show ended? Did we miss the last scene? Yeah, it was. We were wondering quite a bit as we were going through those cannolis.
That is right, and a nice Chianti that you brought over that night. And so I'm doing my rewatch, and I'm at the beginning of season 6, and gosh, I forget his name off the top of my head, but there's one of the members of Tony's crew, and one of the episode titles is Members Only. And he's wearing the Members Only jacket. And again, spoiler for those who haven't seen the show, he ends up hanging himself at the end of the episode because he wanted to move to Florida. He wanted to get out of the mob life. Tony wouldn't let him do it. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you go to the last episode, Members Only guy sitting at the counter. I'm like, is that his brother? Did like he come back and avenge his brother's death? Was that the end that David Chase will never explain? Like all these things running through my head watching it again.
So, it's funny, and I've told you this before, but for those who don't know, so that last episode, the last scene, they're in a place called Holstein's Diner.
That's right.
In Bloomfield, New Jersey, which is my hometown. It's a real place. It was about a mile from the house I grew up in.
Wow.
It was around the corner from where I went to middle school. So after middle school, when we were walking home, we'd walk up this hill and we'd pass Holstein's. We always stopped there for ice cream. Now, this, to me, was a tell because there's this giant mural in the back of Holstein, and they change it every now and then.
Yeah.
But they had in the last episode of The Sopranos, now my memory's foggy, I haven't seen it in a long time, but in the middle of that mural, it was either a giant head of a tiger or a lion.
Yeah.
Right?
A tiger.
So our high school mascot was a tiger. We were the Bloomfield Bengals. So that was not there before. So you have this scene which looks like the Last Supper, and there's this shot with Tony sitting in the middle.
Yeah.
And almost the jaws of, I forget if it was either a tiger or a lion, whatever they had. I'm assuming it was a tiger because that was her mascot. But for some reason, I'm thinking lion. You got to go back and watch it. But anyway, there's symbolism. There's imagery there. You're kind of having this peaceful meal. And then you got the jaws of, this tiger or a lion behind you in the painting. So take that for what you will.
Wow. All right, we're getting off on a tangent here. Please subscribe to Anish and I's side pod called Bada Bing, the story of the Sopranos. We'll get into that more another day. We'll talk off air, as they say. But lacrosse is on our mind here, Anish, and you just came off the ACC tournament, saw Syracuse, who came to Charlotte, where you live, so very convenient for you. You can see the Carolina Panthers gear Anish is rocking there as the voice of the Panthers. They came in on the bubble. They came in, maybe they get in, and they left ACC champions, which it's funny, Anish, because there's no automatic bid in the ACC. And you're thinking to yourself, what can a conference tournament that has no automatic bid do for Syracuse? Well, it not only got them in, it got them a home game, and they're starting to get right. They're playing some of their best lacrosse of the year at the best time of the year to be playing your best lacrosse. But what were your big takeaways from the Syracuse you thought was coming in to the Syracuse that left Charlotte after they beat Notre Dame and Duke?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, John Mullen has a chance to be a real game changer. Nothing that we didn't know, but he dominated the Notre Dame game. He dominated the Duke game. And if you give that offense more possessions, the ability of Syracuse not just to win faceoffs, but especially in the semi, turn those faceoff wins into possessions, which then translated directly into goals. I mean, they had Notre Dame milling in retreat for what felt like a good quarter and a half, where it was make it, take it, turn and rake it. Against Duke and Notre Dame, I thought defensively there was an element of bully ball, a physicality, where every ground ball, every 50-50 ground ball, Syracuse imposed its will. And defensively, the first 3 years, I don't think you could say that about the Syracuse teams under Gary Gait. This is by far, at least from a close defense standpoint. You want to talk about LSMs and D-middies, that's a different topic, but this is the best close defense that Gary Gait has had. And their ability to win some of those matchups against, again, two pretty good teams. This is a year where everybody's flawed, but I think Notre Dame and Duke, given the pedigree, you expect those teams to have a shot in this thing to make a run. I thought Syracuse kind of grew up over those last couple of games in Charlotte. I think I still have questions about not just Syracuse, but pretty much the entire field. Can you do it for 4 games? Can you do it for 4 games? Everybody in the ACC who's in is going to have to answer that question, but I thought it was a big step in the right direction. And then, Brent, the other thing, offensively, they're kind of figuring out who they are. You're starting to see a second midfield emerge. Wyatt Hoddle gives you, a little shake. Peyton Anderson gives you a physicality. The second midfield was so critical last year in terms of production. You're starting to see that now. I think Sam English is a first-team All-American. And I think Joey Spallina is settling into his role, right? He doesn't have to be ball dominant. His lacrosse IQ is off the charts. He can play off ball. He can play off the wing. He can play off his teammates. It doesn't have to be all about 22. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that's just the player and the team kind of figuring out this thing works when everybody eats.
Finn Thompson coming back, I think, fuels that. And the Notre Dame game was an example of it because it worked really well. They kind of inverted Joey in front of the crease in the first Notre Dame game that Syracuse won at the Dome. And they did more of that in the ACC tournament, which I was a little surprised they went back to that because you would think Notre Dame was going to sniff that out. Joey's game against Duke in particular, like you said, wasn't a superstar, but didn't have to be. But the passes that were on the mark, taking advantage of the fact that a defense has to watch him. He's great on the ride. If anything, Joey can get a little too aggressive on the ride sometimes.
I thought he was phenomenal on the ride.
Had a huge check in that game and just is as aggressive as anybody there. And that's, you said everybody needs to eat, but everybody needs to have, like, Sam English is one of the best two-way players in the country. That is settled. You said he's going to be an All-American, PLL, the whole deal, right? But it feels like there's a lot of guys on this team, Anish, that are taking on some kind of second role and embracing what you have to do to win these games. And the ground ball battle they won against Duke was a prime example of that. Everybody was scooping up ground balls, Finn Thompson included, who had 3 in that game. Michael Grace is coming into his own there. So it feels like a lot of little things are starting to build up with this team as well.
Yeah, and then I think the one thing you have to say is the goalie, right? Jimmy McCool, outside of the Harvard game, the Cornell game, has been phenomenal. McCool has been a big game goalie, 20 saves in that game Friday in the semifinals. But to your point, we saw Michael Leo, who I think came into that ACC tournament with 7 assists on the season. I think he had 4 or 5 in that ACC tournament. So a guy who we know can win the one-on-one dodge. He's their best one-on-one guy in that top 6, but now can be an initiator when he needs to, not just a goal scorer. Owen Hiltz becoming a Dodger when he needs to. Hey, if he's got the matchup, he can take it, to the hole, so to speak. He can take it to the goal. He was beating guys one-on-one. Luke Rowe is a guy that we know what he can do. He can shoot with either hand. He can shoot on the run. So the pieces are kind of coming together. And then you started to see it with Finn Thompson. I think Finn Thompson adds that element of unpredictability, right? I've never seen a guy so comfortable taking a high degree of difficulty shot and making it look so easy behind the back, between the legs, around the waist. He almost has a 6th sense to his game. And again, I think the pieces are starting to fit. I think we're realizing how much they missed Finn Thompson, who before he got hurt was playing the best ball of his Syracuse career.
So I think that is part of what was missing all year that maybe they found, but you said it. This is an open field. And Quint Kesnick made a great point on the selection show. There's no paths here, right? No. And you can look at it and you could say, well, maybe this. No. There are every game. I'm going to sound like a coach here. but it is a one game at a time. Gary Gate has stressed this all year. He has been Mr. Cliche all year, and it has worked. We're worried about what's in front of us today. We're not worried about anything else other than that. And look, that got challenged a bit when Syracuse lost 3 straight at the end of the year, and you're starting to question some things about this team. But it's the exact right approach to have now. His calm is contagious expressions. These things that, again, it appears Syracuse is fully going in on. But the reason I think they might not be able to make a run, Anish, are some of those things. There have been times this year they have looked like the best team in the country when they beat Notre Dame. The run at the end of the North Carolina game, they're down 14-8, and all of a sudden, they almost win that thing in the last 3 minutes of the game. There have been other moments this year where I'm like, who is going to stop this team? But it feels like the only thing that can stop Syracuse is Syracuse. They just get in these ruts sometimes where you're like, this is not a team that looks like they belong in Foxborough. Yet there are other times where you can envision them hoisting the trophy over their head. So I guess which team shows up is the one that gets through. But you said it. They got to do it 4 times now.
Yeah, and Brent, to be honest, I think you could have that same conversation about almost any contender in the field this year.
That's what makes
where there are
great,
times when Maryland and John Tillman, who's I think the best coach in the game, you watch them and they go, wow, they don't beat themselves, they don't make mistakes, and then Ohio State jumps on them early. It's 5-1, 6-1, whatever it was, and now Maryland is out of its element, having to play from behind, having to play faster. Oh, okay, you can do that to Maryland, you can beat them, right? Duke, at times you watch their defense and you go championship caliber defense, and then offensively you're kind of scratching your head. But then you watch them Friday against North Carolina and you're going, wow, if Duke can bottle up that offense for 4 games in the tournament, they could dogpile on Memorial Day. North Carolina at times this season when Duffy and Petramala have been healthy, and those two have been banged up, Duffy especially, those two can carry a team to championship weekend. Notre Dame, we know, has the pedigree and they have the ingredients. There have been times this season they don't show up for a half. And you watched it against Syracuse. They go 40 minutes without a goal, and all of a sudden, that third quarter, Syracuse is turning it over. Notre Dame's applying some pressure. I saw that in the Carolina game when Carolina played Notre Dame. They go scoreless for almost the entire first half. And then they score 11 goals in the second half. And if you watch Notre Dame in the first half, you're going, well, that's a team that can get picked off in round 1. You watch them in the second half and you say, that's a team that can go win the whole thing and three-peat. So that applies to everybody, right? I think of the game at the Dome when Notre Dame lost to Syracuse. And I remember walking away from that game and I said, okay, I may have even said it on the air. The expectation for Syracuse this year was championship weekend. I think you might be able to throw championship now into that mix, the way they looked against Notre Dame. And then they go and lose to Cornell and Duke and UNC. And you're kind of going,
what happened?
What are we thinking? And they go beat Notre Dame. They go beat Duke. So everybody's got that Jekyll and Hyde in them this year. I think the first round may not be as crazy as people anticipate, but there could be a few upsets. To me, the quarterfinal round, I think almost every game has a chance to be a toss-up.
It's a hell of a bracket. I mean, when you got Ohio State playing Notre Dame in the first round of this tournament, and see, this is kind of what annoys me about lacrosse still, Anish. As much as this game has grown, and as you know it as well as anybody, I mean, you are the voice of this sport. They still have to pair teams together based on geography because they don't want to pay for a flight. It's like, what are we doing here? This sport, I think, is
sport, Brent. It is a non-revenue.
I get that. But there's only 18 teams in this thing. And like, if you're the NCAA, like, can we fund this thing a little bit here? Can we just put the bracket together based on how they should be seated on merit and not, we got to save a few bucks on a couple of flights? Like, that still does annoy me. That being said, some of the first round matchups we got as a result of it, notably Ohio State against Notre Dame, is incredible. But there is almost not an upset you could throw at me, Anish, and I would look at you funny. Like, if Colgate beats Penn State, I could actually see that happening. If I was going to pick an upset, that would be one. Colgate, when they came and played Syracuse,
I did that game. I remember.
You did that game. You remember. I was so impressed by they're just as confident a team as you're going to see. They have so much swagger. They believe in what they do. They got a great goaltender, Matt Lacombe, who's playing out of his mind right now.
Manliest kid.
That's right. Manliest kid. And that 10-man ride, some teams handle it better than the others. Colgate, I could see. I could see Richmond beating North Carolina. Like, I'm going down the list here. Like, there is not a first-round upset here, I guess, short of either Siena or Albany beating Cornell. But
I think Cornell and Maryland should win. Those are the two that
those are the two you say should get.
I would be very surprised if Cornell lost. I'd be very surprised if Maryland lost, playing playing game winners who are coming off short rest, maybe some travel involved. I do think, though, for example, Princeton, Towson. Towson played some big boys early, got beat up. They've won 10 in a row. Longest active win streak coming into the tournament. Princeton, offensively, they're not quite as good as Cornell, but they're, to me, the second best offensive team in this field. Their top six is lethal. And in a lot of years, that would be the best offense in a tournament. Cornell just is on another level this year. Penn State, Colgate, I mean, go back to the first game of 2024. Colgate beats Penn State. So it has happened. And you're right. They got the Connor brothers. They got a goalie who is used to seeing a lot of shots. You watch him. I mean, this kid is like comfortable defending the Bastille, the amount of shots he takes. He's like a Sixers goalie because that's the style they play. And you kind of have to have that DB mindset. Hey, if I'm going to give up one, I may give up one. I may give up 15, but we got a team that could score 17 with the way they play. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Ohio State beat Notre Dame in the regular season, but that's still the two-time defending champ coming to your place. And then, Georgetown's hot. I mean, they've won their last 4 games by 10 goals. They go to Duke. Richmond, this sums it up, Brent. I've got the Richmond UNC game, and I've got Duke Georgetown on Saturday. So I'm going through my notes and putting my notes together. There's 2 teams in this NCAA tournament field that have a top 10 scoring offense and top 10 scoring defense. Do you know who they are?
2 teams that have both?
Yes.
Okay.
There's only 2 that have a top 10 scoring offense and defense.
Well, maybe you just tipped your hand because of the games you're doing. So maybe I should guess that. I would say Richmond is one.
Richmond is one.
And I would say Duke is the other.
Notre Dame is the other. So think about that.
Okay. Yep.
The 2 teams that are top 10 in scoring offense and scoring defense are both going on the road in round 1, and both are unseeded.
Incredible.
The more I've watched Richmond over the last few days, and I've been talking to some other coaches who've played them, this might be a top 6 team. A top 6 team. Really good on defense. They're plus 18 in shots per game. And it's the best offense Dan Shamati's had. And Dan Shamati, to me, is on the short list of best coaches in college lacrosse right now. Richmond's a new program. They started 12 years ago. This is their 6th NCAA tournament. They've been close. They lost to Penn in overtime a few years ago. 2019, they lost to Duke by a goal in round 1. They're close. Nothing outside of Cornell and Maryland losing would surprise me in round 1.
Now, Dan Shamati, that sounds familiar. That's a West Jenny grad, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking this up on the fly because
he's a West Jenny guy.
He's a West Jenny guy.
Played for Mike Messer, played at Duke. Yeah,
I know it's been well established. A few people have come out of Central New York that could play this game and could coach this game. Yeah. But when you look around, Dan Shamati, Jeff Tambroni at Penn State, I know I'm missing a few here, but it's still, I just feel that surge of pride whenever I see a Central New York guy out there doing well. Shout out to Dan Shamati, who has built a hell of a program there. Richmond, when you said that, I'm like, wait a minute, that Dan Shamati? And like, it's such a small world in lacrosse sometimes. I think it's got to be that guy, but I had to make sure it was him.
You grew up around it. You played out there in Central New York growing up. There's something special of all the schools in that area of being a West Jenny guy. Yeah. It's like the high school Central New York lacrosse equivalent of I shook Sinatra's hand. I played for Mike Messer at West Jenny.
Yeah. As big as the game gets, it's still a tight circle, as you know as well as anybody. Now, here's what I'm going to slightly disagree with you on something. As wide open as this bracket is, and you just laid it out really well, I still think Cornell's got something nobody else does.
The best player.
They have the best player in the country, but they have an offense that nobody touches. We just talked about the stats and everything, but Cornell's got that edge that no one else has. That offense is so good that I just don't know if there's a defense in the way that's going to throw enough of a monkey wrench in the spokes to slow it down. And when you have CJ Kirst, and I just watched Cornell a bunch of times this year, and that thought has come into my head. I'm like, nobody else can do this. A lot of teams can score. A lot of teams have good offenses. A lot of teams have great players, but not like they do. And I just see them a smidge above everybody else. So
I think that's fair. I think they are the team to beat. It's funny, you do the preseason poll every year, and I'm not going to say who, but a colleague of mine, when the preseason poll came out, he goes, "Hey, did you see the preseason poll?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw it." He goes, "Who's the moron that voted Cornell number one?"
Oh, okay.
Notre Dame had every first place vote except one. Yeah, I was that moron.
Hey, there we go. You're the moron. I love it.
Listen, it wasn't like, hey, I went out and called Cornell would be the 1 seed or anything. At the end of the, when you're voting in the preseason poll, when you pick who your preseason number one is, that's the team that you think ultimately will win a championship. And in a year where you lost 2 graduating classes, essentially, last year you saw the exodus of the 2020 and the 2021 class, right? So everybody has holes to fill. Everybody lost significant star power. I just looked at their team and I said, wow, they have so much continuity coming back in their top 6 on offense. And I really kept it simple. And they have what I thought was going to be the best player in the country. And again, that's not really a hot take. We all kind of knew that was CJ Kirst going into the season. And I said, in a year where everybody's going to be flawed, how do you not go with a pretty good team who's got the best player? Because if they get into a pickle and they're down 3 in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes to go, you throw the ball to number 15 and he's going to do something. He can get to his shot. He can get to his spot whenever he wants. And the closest that I've seen to CJ Kirst, you probably got to go back 4 or 5 years, Pat Spencer, who was able to do that. And nothing against those Loyola teams. They went to a Final Four with Spencer. I think CJ Kirst's supporting cast is unbelievable. Ryan Goldstein, I mean, that's not even like Batman and Robin. That's Superman and Batman. Firth, perfect compliment. Hugh Kelleher, big physical dodger who's got a hammer for an outside shot. They got all the pieces that fit. And Kirst can have a game like he did against Brown. Would he only have 3 goals, but that's 6 assists. I mean, the guy wakes up and he's getting 6.5 points a game. It's absurd. He's making it look so easy. I think this guy's got a chance to go to the PLL and maybe be a top 5 player in the PLL as a rookie.
They set the goal mark for the fewest amount of games for anybody who's done it. And you and I are speaking before the PLL draft. CJ Kirst is going to be the first pick. This just in, right?
And he's going to be the Tuarton Award winner. There's no drama on that.
There is absolutely no
drama.
That would elicit another moron comment. Whoever does not vote for him, you're not going to be a moron in the sense that you can circle back and like Anish did and say, hey, look what I did. I was the one guy.
I don't have a vote. I don't have a vote for the Tuarton, so it can't be me.
You don't vote for the Tuarton
twice, only once.
We're taking your vote. It's like that one guy that didn't vote for Derek Jeter. It's like we need to find him and get him out, right? On that note, though, with Kirst going in, you mentioned Sam English, who is going to get drafted and will be one of the better two-way players in the PLL the minute he walks on the field there. You call those games, Anish, and it's been interesting to see Paul Rabel built this league into a league. He's hanging out with Mike Greenberg on Get Up this morning and the prominence that's there. So it harkens back to something I said a few minutes ago. While the game needs to grow in a lot of ways, image-wise, the PLL, I think, counters that because the acceleration this league has had in stepping up and becoming something that professional lacrosse struggled for a long time. to really establish itself and step forward because the college game was so prominent, and they have done it with the PLL, and you have seen it from a first-hand standpoint calling the game. So how much – I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this question, but I appreciate what the PLL has done, but it feels like there's just so much more they can do. What's like the 5-year outlook of what the PLL can be?
I think really the big thing for not just the PLL, but for the sport in general is you are building momentum and you hope that you are on a upward trajectory and ascent moving toward this on-ramp of 2028 when lacrosse becomes an Olympic sport.
There you go.
And post-Olympics, what happens? Will this be a sport that becomes something more than a niche sport? Which, if we're being honest, that's what it is right now. Can it crack the mainstream? Can Olympic exposure, Olympic funding? You're an Olympic sport. That means all these other countries, now the government can help fund lacrosse at youth levels. Will that help the sport grow? And then what will the entities stateside do, right? I think the problem that we've had in lacrosse for so long, and I've used this analogy, is we're all trying to fight for a larger slice of a personal pan pizza. Instead of saying, let's get a bigger oven, bake a bigger pie, and can everybody eat, right? Before it was the MLL and the NLL and college lacrosse and everybody kind of competing. Well, okay, now it's, the PLL, the NLL, it's college lacrosse. I think there is more synergy between the pro game and the college lacrosse now than there's ever been. But then you have sixes, right? Where the 6-on-6 format, that's going to be the Olympic format. It is not for all lacrosse fans, and they make that clear. We're a purist. The field game, that's what rules. So you have the field game, you have sixes, you have the indoor game. Can the sport survive with these multiple versions? I think these are questions that I don't have the answer to, but these are questions. What's going to happen, let's say, if casual sports fans flock to lacrosse because they like sixes, and then you have the gatekeepers, the diehards, call them what you want, who say, this really isn't lacrosse. What does that do for the sport? So there's a lot of headwinds to fight through, if we're being honest. And I think sometimes we just got to get out of our own way, because I always go back to how I got into this sport. I didn't know anything about lacrosse. When I was in college, learned about it, watched it, and walked away going, this is a pretty darn cool sport. This is pretty awesome. This is pretty cool, pretty awesome if you let yourself immerse yourself into it, dive into it. But if you've got the people within the sport telling you no or dunking on it, and they don't like the stories about the guys who play other sports and who cross over like a Pat Spencer or a Chris Hogan or Jordan Faison, what are you telling the casual sports fan? And Brent, I remember you and I, when we were doing a radio show, 20-something years ago, NASCAR was kind of in one of those moments.
Yeah.
Where you and I were talking about NASCAR and we're kind of getting into it, fantasy league, right? And it was sort of this thing where the casual sports fan kind of wants in. Do the NASCAR fans want the casual sports fan in? And I think the sport as a whole and the fans of the sport will have to grapple with that. But if the Olympics are to be a real springboard, we've got to have some kind of unified version, don't we?
Yes, we do. But I do like that they're innovating. I like the sixes game. I think it fits what they're trying to do in trying to innovate the sport, appeal to a younger audience. I think it fits the Olympic format. I guess you would wish in one way that a lot of these innovations would take place under one roof, right? Like the NBA didn't have a 3-point line for a long time. And when it did, it changed the game within this structure. You mentioned it. These are different formats and different games, but the Olympics is going to be a huge test. And I can't wait to see it because it's just always made sense that lacrosse should be back in the Olympics, and for it to, the first time back, be when it's here in LA is going to be something. And I'll tell you what, I don't know how these things work, and I don't want to get you in trouble here, Anish, but I know it's on NBC, but they need to borrow you for the Olympics in a few years and get to call those games and add that to a growing, impressive list of things you get to do and the sports that you get to call. I'm just putting that out there now for the bosses at NBC. I'll give Tirico a little nudge. Be like, help our guy out here. Let NBC borrow you for the Olympics. Just saying.
I tell you what, if that came to fruition, and there would be a few hoops to jump through, I think it'd be awesome. It'd be awesome if that opportunity was ever there. But it would be NBC would have to want me and would have to get permission from ESPN, and
it's happened before.
Hopefully, it wouldn't coincide with Panthers preseason, so there would be a lot of moving parts. But if the opportunity to do lacrosse at the Olympics, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it's something that I didn't want to do. I think it'd be awesome. It'd be great to do, but there would have to be a lot of things that would have to align, and I know that for that to happen, and that's a long way away, and who knows what the landscape will look like in a few years. But
that's why I brought it up now.
You saying that, and it'd be cool if it happened.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up now. It gives us a couple of years to work on this and get everybody aligned and get their schedules in order, and But that's for down the road. For now, you're getting ready to call some great games this weekend, and I assume you'll be in Foxborough calling the Final Four.
We'll be in Foxborough. A little bit of a crazy travel weekend for the quarterfinals, where I'll be in New York on Saturday for Mets-Yankees, ESPN radio, and then driving down to Annapolis for the Sunday quarters. So I may try to get the tail end of Hofstra if time allows, if we have a tidy 3-hour baseball game, which we do these days with the pitch clock.
There you go. The glamorous life of a broadcaster, ladies and gentlemen, having to go from one to the other. And for a lifelong Yankees fan, getting to occasionally call some Yankees games, that's got to be pretty cool for you.
Yeah, no, that is cool. That is cool. I mean, you've been around me, so you know what that means to me. So that's always been kind of a dream. And I love Major League Baseball. Grew up with it. That was my first sport. Still is. So to get to do that and do that on the radio has been one of the cool things of the last couple of years that's happened.
And we love to see it. We love to see everything you're doing with lacrosse, with the Panthers, and everything else. And it's always great to catch up with you, my friend, talk some lacrosse, talk some Sopranos, and everything else that comes up. And best of luck to you going forward, and great success. I know we'll have you back on the pod sometime soon, but thanks for hopping on with us today, talking some lax.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun tournament. I can't wait to see what happens. It is as wide open, and it feels it's going to be chaotic, which should make for some pretty good theater.
Yeah, but Cornell's going to win. Thanks again to Anish Shroff for that awesome conversation about lacrosse, the Sopranos, and so much more. Yeah, I'm doing a Sopranos rewatch right now, so it is squarely on the brain for sure. Bring me your Sopranos takes by being a Syracuse Sports Insider. This connection that we have in this growing community of Syracuse sports fans has been amazing to see it grow, but it can be bigger and better, and we're doing that. And you're like, oh, Brent, come on, it's May. It's almost summertime. What's going on? Guys, if I've learned anything, there's no such thing as the offseason. Between the transfer portal, Fran Brown seems to make news every week with something. We're going to have some fun over the summer months here with some unique topics and drafts and conversations we're going to have about all things circulating around Syracuse sports. So what offseason? There's no such thing. And anything that pops up, as a Syracuse Sports Insider, that you hear about it directly via text message access to me. You can ask your questions, comments, just shoot the breeze. Tell me what's on your mind when it comes to Syracuse sports. If we have breaking news, you get it first. And as the commercials say, so much more. It's only $3.99 a month to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. You can try it free for 2 weeks. All the info is there on your screen if you're watching on YouTube, or just hit joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports. That's joinsubtext.com/Syracuse Sports to learn how to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. And again, the info in the show notes, how you can sign up for a 2-week free trial and then just $3.99 a month after that. All right. It's time to let the Nate Gross Band take us home with their amazing song, Ride with the Devil. We played a little bit of it earlier. We're going to play it in its entirety to end the pod. Get in touch if you want your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports. All the info on that is in the show notes as well. Congratulations to you on your second place award, Syracuse Press Club, for Best Sports Show. I just push the button and make this thing happen in terms of editing it and, getting the pod up on the interwebs. You guys make this show what it is. And we thank you for that. And we congratulate you on your award. Let's ride with the devil on out for this one. Thanks for listening and watching Syracuse Sports. Please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube so you don't miss a darn thing.